Hello, thank you for viewing this video. In this video I'll go over the main features. The first feature to note is that we cannot release the game without unchecking a variable in the game controller. We have characters data. In characters data there is a variable called unlockAll. Please uncheck this before releasing. In game control, once we go into the game control script, which is a script that was provided inside the single player system, we have added a few variables that are necessary for the game to run in multiplayer mode. This is the Photon View. The Photon View is the component that is given to us by the Photon plugin. This is necessary to make sure that everything synchronizes inside the network. Then we have a few other variables for the multiplayer scene, and we also need to tell the game whether we are in the multiplayer scene or not. So this is the code for that. And the rest of the game, the single player functions work exactly the same way. The difference is that we check whether we are in the multiplayer scene or not. If we are in the multiplayer scene, we actually change the way some of the functions are loaded. For example, over here you can see that the entire statement that is for a single player game, it's pretty straightforward, but over here we also need to pass in the player prefs value for knowing which kind of controls the player is using and then load them in the multiplayer scene. And then we also have a few features, which means that we want to spawn colliders in the multiplayer scene, and we can only do that if we are the master client. So the spawning colliders happens in the master client, and that can only happen if we are the master client. So that is for that. And if I go over to spawn this spawner script, I have coded this as well, but let me go back to game control. Inside of game control we have endgame over here, and we have modified the endgame as well, so it's different for the multiplayer scene and it's different for the single player scene. The difference is basically that some of the features that are required in the single player scene are not required in the multiplayer scene. Also, we do not want both clients, the foreign and the master client, to return to the main menu if one of them sees the game over. So that is being handled in that. Then we also have a this is the callback that I haven't touched this. We have a RPC for play game. So this runs on both the foreign clients and the master clients when the game is being played. So over here you can see this is an enumerator for starting coroutine. So if we are going to play the game, this is the RPC for that. However, this is not being used in the RPC. Instead, we are just going to start the starting coroutine is actually going to make sure that the game starts on both clients simultaneously. Over here we have got an RPC spawn corrector. This is a huge switch statement because this use switch statement is used because the actual character data script could not be used in the multiplayer scene, and you can see that all of the characters are being loaded using this switch scene, using this switch statement. And we also store the spawn position of each and every character based on their number inside the room. So player 1 is going to get some spawn position over here, and player 2 is going to get some spawn position over here. Then we also have a try disconnection function, which is going to try to disconnect from the Photon network once some conditions are met. So this is just a safety enumerator to make sure that the Photon network properly disconnects when we return back to the main menu. The scripts that I've made and the resources folder is full of new characters. So you have characters for the single player scene in the prefabs folder, but we also have made a bunch of prefabs in the resources folder, and all of these prefabs have the Photon View component attached, as well as the Photon Transform View, the Photon Animator View, and we also have a player movement script, but I've made some changes to that as well, which I'll go over. In fact, I should go over them right now. All of these, there they are, and these are all of the players that or all of the characters that were already in the game, but I had to modify them, so I made them entirely new. So these are the ones that Photon will load, and these are the ones that and these are the ones that were inside the game in the prefabs there. These are the original ones. So the single player loads these characters, and the Photon network loads the ones that are inside the resources folder at runtime using the switch case that I just showed you. In the player movement, we actually just need to make sure that we are moving. We are actually moving for the local player, not the foreign player. So that's the only thing. So over here you can see that there are some variables. These are for sync transform. This is for the Unity editor, and this is for the split controls, and this is for split controls as well. All of these are just the same variables. However, over here we return if we are not the local player, because PV is mine. If it's false, that means we're not the local player, and if we don't have PV, it means we're not actually not in the single, and we are not in the multiplayer scene. So this PV is actually the Photon View. So we check whether we have a Photon View component. If we do have a Photon View component, we also need to check whether we are the local player or not. And if we are not, then we don't need to run the collisions on the foreign player. So basically the on trigger enter returns if we are not the local player. So that means this entire return statement is making sure that if you collide, the other player does not collide. Otherwise, if this return statement wasn't there, collisions would be detected on all clients across the network, and people would just start falling. Then we also have these RPC statements to make sure that every animation is synced properly. The jump is synced also using the RPC over here, and we also have a player crouch multiplayer. So that is another function to make sure that the player crouches properly on the multiplayer scene. We also have sync transform, which is syncing the transform of the player. And we have enabled uText, which is the text being generated at runtime, so that uText appears when you are inside the multiplayer scene. This is a very standard Photon lobby script, which is making sure that we actually search for a room and join a random room, and if we do not find a random room, we are going to create a random room based on the room options, as well as the random range given between 0 to 9999. In the Photon room script, this is another standard Photon script, and we have a few variables over here that are making sure we know how many players there are in the lobby right now. And we also have an instance of this over here, and we also have in the start, we are setting how many players we want, what the starting time is, whether we are delay start or not. And if we are delay start, then we're going to run only the delay start variables. We are only going to run the delay start statements. We're not going to run the non-delay start statements. And we have these info text variables over here, which go through the various stages of the Photon network. So I'm just going to play, and I'm going to show some of them to you. So, for example, awaiting players is the statement that runs when you're waiting for players inside the script, inside the lobby. I click begin search, and it'll read here awaiting players. So that is something that this statement is doing. And once we have 2 players, we are going to create the player, and we are going to load the next scene. Other than that, we there are several modifications made to other scripts, especially the spawner script, which is most important. Please, I don't recommend touching this because it took me quite a while to actually get these to work properly. So we have spawn colliders. This is for the single player, and we have spawn colliders for the multiplayer. This is being called in the game control script, which I showed you earlier. So if I go over to the, let me just go over this. There we go. There you go. This is the game control. Let me just find out where this is. Spawn colliders, continue. Spawn colliders and multiplayer. There it is. And over here, we are actually over here in the game control script. If we are the master client, the master client is going to spawn the colliders for across the network, and we're going to do this using the start coroutine spawn colliders multiplayer. Over here we're going to again use the same algorithm of the random range as well as the start weight, which the single player is using, and while not stop, we are going to continue generating the colliders, and once that is done, we are going to spawn a collider using spawn collider master client. Over here we are taking in the random generator number, which is being generated over here, and passing it to the RPC. The RPC is going to generate these colliders over here for the master client, and then we are going to run another RPC to generate the same colliders on the foreign clients. So there you go. This is the master client collision, and this is the foreign client collisions, and that is basically most of the features. There are other features too, however there is heavy modification done, but these are the main features that are in the game right now that did not exist in the single player scene.